very first video with OCD recovery, and today I'm just going to be talking to you guys about my journey so far. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on me, where I was at when I first started with OCD recovery, where I'm at now, and what's helped me along my journey. Firstly, I am 22 years old. My very first severe OCD episode was at the age of 12, and basically I just had a lot of the typical fears that young children get latched with. I was scared of being possessed by a ghost. I was scared of demons. I had a lot of religious OCD, scared of going to hell. I felt like I was lying to my parents all the time, and I was scared of being a bad person and lying to them all the time. I had a little bit of magical thinking OCD, where I felt that I needed to do something a certain number of times or my family was going to die, and it would just switch around to things like that. And at the time, I had no idea what was going on, and my family didn't know either, and my parents were scared that I was going crazy. I'm extremely grateful to have a supportive family that loves me and has my back all the time. They've always been right by my side for everything. And so my dad and mom started buying books to try to figure out what was going on with me. And my dad came across a book on OCD, and as soon as he started reading it, he said, "That's my daughter." And we realized that what was going on was a OCD spike. And in the book, it said that you can recover from OCD. But this was about 10 years ago, so there was not as much information out there about OCD, and there wasn't a lot of help out there as there is now. So what we basically knew was that stopping compulsions was a big part of recovery, and that also CBT therapy seemed to help people with OCD a lot. So my family and I worked together to stop a lot of my major compulsions that were keeping me in the fear cycle, and I started going to CBT therapy, and I came out of that severe episode about a year and a half later is when I was kind of doing well. And from then to about 21, 22, I lived a pretty normal life. I was a very happy kid. I had a lot going on in my life, had a lot going for me, but I was definitely still a very anxious kid. And looking back now, I can see that OCD was always a part of my life, and that it was kind of like niggling into different aspects along the way. But I didn't really know that OCD could latch on to anything, that compulsions and obsessions could be about anything. So I was just kind of going about my life and just thinking that I had anxiety left over. And so when I was in high school, I had a pretty big spike in anxiety, and I went to see a therapist, and she did not identify that I had an OCD spike going on at that time. And so she put me on an SSRI medication, and she told me that I was going to be on that for the rest of my life. And I just kind of took that and went on my way and started doing well again. And I was on that medication for about 4 years when I decided to stop in December of 2021. Basically, I would have really bad withdrawals when I would miss the medication. I didn't want to be on a medication for the rest of my life, and I was at a good place. I felt like I was secure mentally, and I had a lot going for me, so I felt like I could handle tapering off. So I started doing that, and I finally finished tapering in February of 2022. And just about after that is when OCD started to creep in a bit. It was not at a severe level yet, and I was not really aware of what was going on. It started with body dysmorphia and a little bit of existential OCD. And then I had some major life events happen to me. My grandfather died. I broke up with my fiance, and I decided to change my whole life path, all kind of in the same month. And about 2 weeks after I broke up with my fiance is when OCD latched in June of 2022 at a severe level. It started with a fear of never being fulfilled, of never enjoying things again, of not being happy, of depression. So that's basically a fear subset. And I was really scared that I was never going to have a career that I felt safe in. And it latched 24 hours a day playing in my head. And I started doing compulsions, asking for reassurance from my family, confessing to them. And that's when like the cycle really set in. And about 2 weeks later, I had a panic attack. And after that panic attack, I was talking to my dad, and that's when he realized that what was happening was another OCD loop that I was stuck in. And he realized that because I was acting very, very similar to the way I was when I was 12. And so we at least had an awareness of what was going on. At the time, we still didn't know really fully what to do to help me. So I was just trying to go about everything as I could. That's when OCD decided to morph, and it switched around to about 12 different themes. I was at an extremely severe level. I don't know, a lot of people will never be at the level that I was at. I had sensory motor set in, and that was my biggest theme, really. That's been my biggest theme throughout the whole journey. I had about 30 sensations that I was scared of experiencing for the rest of my life. Things like seeing my nose, my heartbeat, swallowing, blinking, even just an awareness of being alive. All these different kinds of strange sensations that I was scared of noticing. And I was just completely terrified. And I didn't know that sensory motor was a subset of OCD. So I had an inkling that it was probably part of what was going on with me, but I didn't fully know that that was a possible theme to have. I had POCD, I had incest OCD, I had sensory motor thoughts about certain thoughts playing in my head over and over again for the rest of my life. And just basically all different kinds of themes and just intrusive thoughts about just about anything and everything. I had about 9.5 out of 10 anxiety every day. It just felt like I was going to have a panic attack at any moment, all day, every day. It got to the point where I didn't leave my parents' side. I followed them around everywhere. So I would follow my mom around in the house, and I would follow her around every time she left the house. So I wouldn't do anything on my own. And I was in such a strong cycle that I was confessing and asking for reassurance from my parents every 5 minutes. OCD was all I could talk about, and I was just completely terrified. I lost 15 pounds in a month because I couldn't eat. I was just shoving like little bits of lemon cake down my throat because I needed something in my stomach, and that was all I could really get down. I slept about 2 to 3 hours every couple of days. And I went through a period of psychosis, I believe, for about 2 weeks. I was just so terrified. I didn't really have an awareness of what was going on. And it was like a more intense version of DPDR. So I just was so confused about everything that was happening, and I was so scared. And I started avoiding all of life. And that was basically when I did not want to be here anymore. I felt like I was going to be stuck in this fear cycle forever, and that what life wasn't worth living anymore. And I got so scared I was going to hurt myself that I checked myself into a hospital for a night. And I can see now that that was a bit of suicide OCD coming in because of that panic and need to be in a safe environment because I was so scared that I was going to hurt myself. And so that was happening, and then I finally decided that I needed to try to recover on my own in the middle of July. And that's when even more fear snuck in, because I started reading that stopping compulsions was a big part of OCD recovery, and I was just so scared that I was performing compulsions everywhere and that I was going to be stuck forever, and my OCD was just morphing to left and right to everything and anything. And that's when I decided that I really needed more help. I had no idea what I was doing really, and that I needed to find a resource out there. So I started researching online, and I came across OCD Recovery's YouTube videos. The very first video I watched was of Nick, and he was talking about his sensory motor OCD and how he was recovered. And it inspired so much hope in me. I had never heard of the things that he was talking about. First off, I realized that sensory motor OCD was a theme and that was what I was experiencing, and that there was a person here in front of me that recovered from it. And secondly, I started listening to the things that he was saying that helped him recover, and they were things I'd never heard of. I'd never heard of universal self-life and other acceptance. I'd never heard of disputing before. I had never heard acceptance of your worst case scenario. And so all of that together led me to pick OCD recovery to help me out. And I scheduled my first one-on-one with Nick and Rob. And my very first meeting, I was just completely panicked. I was in that point where I didn't want to be here anymore. I probably hadn't slept in about 5 days. So that entire meeting, I was just trying to confess and get reassurance from Nick and Rob. And I was just so scared. So after that first meeting, though, I felt so much better because Rob was able to tell me that I was not the exception to recovery. I felt that I was at the most severe level, that I was the most severe case that they had ever had, that because I had multiple themes, I couldn't recover, that because I was scared of a specific thing, I couldn't recover, and that the tools would not work for me. And Rob made me aware of the fact that that's one of the biggest tricks that OCD plays on you. It's always going to make you feel like you're the exception, that this fear is the obsession, that this compulsion is going to help you, and it's just going to trick you to keep you in that cycle. So it took me a little bit to trust Nick and Rob on my journey because I was scared that what they were saying wasn't going to help me. And it came to a head when one day I was just like, I'm just going to do whatever they tell me. I don't care if it doesn't help me recover. I'm just going to go head first into this and just put all my effort into it. And that's when I started really putting in the work with Nick and Rob. And so now I'll go into kind of some of the things that I had to do to get me to where I am now. First thing I did was I got back to work, full-time job. I stopped talking about OCD completely with my family. No more confessing, no more reassurance with my parents, no more complaining about OCD, no more venting, no more reaching out to Nick for reassurance when I was scared. And then I started leaving the house on my own. I started really small. I would go drive down and get a coffee and then come back. And I would go out and get something to eat by myself and come back. I started taking a pottery class once a week, which got me out of the house. And it kind of broke that cycle where I was so scared to be alone because I was exposing myself to being alone and being away from my parents. My parents had to start leaving the house too, so they would go out and do things with their friends and leave me behind because I was 22 years old, and so I should be able to function on my own as an adult. And then the early days of that were extremely difficult because I was just terrified of everything. And I was stopping numerous compulsions at once. I still wasn't sleeping while I was going to my full-time job. And I was just slowly building my life back up, one day at a time, bit by bit, adding in new hobbies, adding in new things. I started seeing my friends again and telling them what was going on. I started working on acceptance, and I had to stop a lot of my compulsions around recovery. So that was like watching OCD videos for 5 to 6 hours a day, or going in forums, or going in the WhatsApp group too much, or researching OCD too much. And I started spending a lot of time alone. And basically, I just had to bring all of the discomfort with me wherever I did, like wherever I went, just like an uncomfortable coat. I would bring it to work. I would bring the discomfort with me to my pottery class. I would bring the discomfort with me to see my friends. I would bring it with me to watch TV. I would bring it with me at nighttime, just everywhere I went, just wearing it around and stopping those major compulsions that I had. And so I've put in a lot of work. I've made a lot of progress in 8 months and to get to this place that I'm at now, where I have my full-time job. I just started a business 2 weeks ago for my art. So I'm technically a business owner while I have a job. I've started working out. I do a lot of my hobbies. I ski a lot and I go out with friends a lot. And I started connecting with a lot of old friends that I haven't talked to in years, and I started making a lot of new ones. I have a new boyfriend, and my life is just completely full right now. And so it's important to know that building your life along with OCD recovery is the key to recovery. It's not just focusing on recovery itself, because those lifestyle factors are really what help bring you out of it and bring you out into the world. And so that was super important for me. And I'm at this place now where I wouldn't consider myself recovered. I still have a lot to work on, but I'm not in that severe suffering state that I was at when I first started. And if I can make this much progress coming from that position that I was at in 8 months, anybody can recover. So if you're out there watching this video right now and you're just starting, just know that you're not the exception, and that OCD is always going to try to trick you into thinking that you're the exception. And I'm just so grateful for OCD recovery, for how far I've come, for the beautiful life that I have now. And I really can't wait to see where I'm at in a year from now. I've accepted the fact that this journey may take a little bit longer than I want to, and that maybe I may never recover fully from OCD, but I'm going to keep putting the work into it, and I'm just going to keep making progress day by day. And I'm just so thankful for Nick and Rob. And really, guys, if you follow what the books are saying, if you read the books, if you apply the principles of universal self-life and other acceptance, if you start disputing, if you do those exposures, if you really put the work in, you're going to see progress, and you're going to see it bit by bit. As Rob always says, we're all like onions with our fears. You have the fears on the outside, and you just keep working down through the onion layers until you get to the bottom, to that last piece. And so that's what I've been doing, peeling back all of those layers, and I've gotten to the point where I'm completely functioning and have a beautiful, wonderful life right now. But I just want to keep making progress. I don't want to live my life in fear anymore. I want to live a full, wonderful life, and working towards that. So thank you.